Marigold Prescott, 35, sat stunned on her lakefront deck as her parents' words hung in the humid Tennessee air. "We've already told Amber we're moving in with you." The $960,000 property she'd purchased after her divorce, her sanctuary, her fresh start, was being claimed without her consent. Little did she know, this moment would unravel decades of family secrets and reveal who truly deserved loyalty in a web of betrayal. Hey everyone! Before I dive deeper into this family nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Are you team my house, my rules, or do you think family should always come first, no matter what? Drop a like if you've ever had to set boundaries with relatives, and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Now, let's get into how my parents tried to hijack my dream home, and the shocking revenge karma that followed. The lake house had been Marigold's dream for as long as she could remember. Growing up in a cramped apartment in downtown Nashville where her family of 5 shared 2 bedrooms, she'd always yearned for space and serenity. The modest inheritance from her grandmother, combined with her divorce settlement after catching her ex-husband with her former best friend, had finally made it possible. After 15 years of saving every penny from her job as a corporate attorney, Marigold had purchased the 3-bedroom cedar cabin with panoramic views of Cherokee Lake. "I don't understand, Marigold," said her voice trembling, as she faced her parents across the kitchen island she'd installed herself. "How could you promise Amber she could move in here with you both, without even asking me first?" Her mother Eleanor waved a dismissive hand. "We assumed it would be fine. This place is much too big for just one person, and your sister's going through a rough time with the twins and the separation from Greg." Her father Richard nodded in agreement. "Family helps family, Goldie. You've always been the successful one. Amber needs this. We need this." Marigold felt her chest tighten. This wasn't the first time her younger sister's needs had been prioritized over hers, but it was the most egregious. "I bought this place as a sanctuary after my divorce. I need time alone to heal." "Your divorce was 3 years ago," her mother snapped. "Amber's situation is happening right now. And she has your old bedroom at our house," Marigold countered. "Why can't she stay there with the twins?" Her parents exchanged a look that immediately set off alarm bells in Marigold's mind. "We sold the house," her father finally admitted. "The market was too good to pass up." "You what?" Marigold gasped. Where have you been living with Amber for the past month?" her mother said. "But her apartment is too small for all of us. We told her about your beautiful lake house and how we're sure you'd welcome us all." Marigold felt the blood drain from her face. "So you sold your home without telling me, moved in with Amber, and then promised her you'd all move in here without ever consulting me." "We're family," her father said firmly, as if that explained everything. "We support each other." "I can't believe this," Marigold whispered. She stood up, needing to create physical distance. "This is my home. I worked hard for it. I'm not ready to share it with anyone." Her mother's face hardened. "After everything we've sacrificed for you, all those extra shifts I worked to put you through college, this is how you repay us." "I paid you back every cent for my education," Marigold reminded her. "With interest." "Money isn't everything," her father said. "Loyalty matters more." The word loyalty struck Marigold like a slap. Where was their loyalty to her wishes, her boundaries, her needs? "I need time to think," she finally said. "This is a lot to process." "There's nothing to think about," her mother insisted. "Amber and the twins need stability. We've already told them they can move in next weekend." Marigold felt her resolve hardening. "I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not ready to share my home right now." Her father's face turned an alarming shade of red. "You always were the selfish one. Your sister would never turn her back on family like this." As her parents stormed out, slamming the front door behind them, Marigold sank onto her sofa trembling. She'd never stood up to them like this before. The guilt was overwhelming, but underneath it, something else was brewing, a sense that there was more to this situation than they were telling her. Something about the way they'd exchanged that look when discussing the house sale didn't sit right with her. She pulled out her phone and texted her best friend Vanessa, "Need to talk. Family drama just hit DEFCON 1. Vanessa's response was immediate, "Wine emergency, I'll be there in 20. Little did Marigold know, this confrontation was just the beginning. The real storm was still gathering on the horizon, and the foundations of everything she thought she knew about her family were about to be shaken to their core. Vanessa arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a sympathetic ear. As Marigold's oldest friend from law school, she had witnessed the complex dynamics of the Prescott family for years. "So they just assumed they could move in?" Vanessa asked incredulously, pouring them each a generous glass of Cabernet. With no discussion, "They didn't just assume," Marigold corrected. "They promised Amber they could all move in. My parents, my sister and her 5-year-old twins. They've already told the kids they'll be living at Auntie Goldie's Lakehouse where they can swim every day." "That's emotional manipulation," Vanessa said, her legal mind immediately identifying the tactic, "using the kids to pressure you." Marigold sighed. "I feel terrible saying no, but I bought this place specifically to have my own space after the divorce." "Which they know," Vanessa pointed out. "They came to the housewarming. They heard your speech about finally having your own sanctuary." "Something feels off about all this," Marigold said, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "They said they sold their house because the market was good, but they never mentioned it was even listed." Vanessa's expression changed. "Didn't you say your parents refinanced to help Amber buy her condo 3 years ago?" "Yes," Marigold confirmed. "They took out equity to give her the down payment. And now they've sold completely." "That seems extreme for people who've lived in the same house for 30 years, Vanessa observed. "Have you checked the property records? It's public information." Marigold set down her wineglass and grabbed her laptop. As an attorney, she knew exactly where to look. Within minutes, she had pulled up the Davidson County property records. "That's weird," she murmured, scrolling through the information. "It says the house was sold 6 months ago, not last month like they claimed." 6 months, Vanessa leaned over to look at the screen. Where have they been living all this time? A sick feeling began forming in Marigold's stomach. She picked up her phone and called her cousin Tyler, who lived near her parents' old neighborhood. "Hey Tyler, quick question. Have you seen my parents around lately?" "Your parents?" Tyler sounded confused. "Goldie, they moved to Florida last winter. Your dad said they were retiring to Sarasota. They had a big goodbye party. Amber was there with the kids." Marigold nearly dropped the phone. "Florida." After hanging up, she turned to Vanessa with shock etched on her face. "They told everyone they moved to Florida 6 months ago. Tyler says there was a goodbye party that I wasn't invited to." "What the hell?" Vanessa exclaimed. "So where have they actually been?" Marigold's mind was racing. She opened her banking app and began scrolling through past transactions. 3 years ago, when I paid them back for college, they insisted I write checks instead of doing electronic transfers. I thought it was just because they're old school. Or because they didn't want a paper trail," Vanessa suggested grimly. After an hour of digging through financial records, social media and making discreet calls to family members, a disturbing picture emerged. Her parents had been in financial trouble for years. They hadn't just refinanced for Amber's down payment, they'd taken multiple loans against their house. Then they'd sold it for far less than market value, in a hurry failed to establish themselves in Florida, and had been bouncing between relatives' homes for months, claiming they were visiting while looking for the right property, Sarasota. "No wonder they want to move in with you," Vanessa said. "They're broke and homeless." "But why lie about it?" Marigold wondered. "I would have helped them if they'd just been honest." The answer came in the form of an email notification. Marigold had signed up for credit monitoring after her divorce, and the alert showed a credit check had been performed in her name for a loan application. "I didn't apply for any loans," she told Vanessa, frantically logging into the monitoring service. The truth hit her like a freight train. Someone had attempted to take out a home equity line of credit against her lake house in her name. Identity theft, Vanessa whispered. Goldie, someone tried to borrow against your property. Marigold's hands shook as she called the bank. After verifying her identity and explaining the situation, the loan officer confirmed her worst fears. Yes, Miss Prescott, we declined the application because the signatures didn't match our records. The application was submitted in person at our Nashville branch last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, when her parents had visited, claiming they wanted to take her to lunch to discuss family matters. She'd been in court all day and had to reschedule. They were trying to take out a loan against my house in my name, Marigold said numbly after hanging up. They needed to move in here to avoid suspicion when the money appeared. Vanessa's lawyer instincts kicked into high gear. That's fraud, identity theft, and attempted grand larceny. These are serious crimes, Goldie. Tears streamed down Marigold's face. My own parents. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amber. How could you do this to us? Mom and Dad have done everything for you, and you can't even help when we need it. The twins are crying because I had to tell them they won't get to live at the lake after all. I hope you're happy in your big empty house all alone. Marigold showed Vanessa the message. Amber doesn't know she realized. They've been lying to her too. Or she's in on it, Vanessa cautioned. Don't assume anything right now. As the night wore on, Marigold's shock turned to resolve. I need to know the whole truth before I decide what to do next. What she didn't realize was how deep the betrayal went, and how it would connect to wounds from the past she thought had long healed. The next morning, Marigold woke with purpose. She needed answers, and there was one person who might have them, her Aunt Patricia, her mother's estranged sister. The family rift had occurred when Marigold was just 12, and no one ever explained why Patricia suddenly stopped coming to family gatherings. After some internet sleuthing, Marigold found Patricia's number and placed the call. Aunt Patty, it's Marigold Prescott. There was a long pause. Goldie, my goodness, it's been decades. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I need to understand something about my parents, Marigold explained. Things aren't adding up, and I thought you might have insights. Patricia's laugh was tinged with bitterness. Oh, I have insights all right. What do you want to know? Why did you and Mom stop speaking? Marigold asked directly. She never told you. Patricia sounded genuinely surprised. Your mother and I stopped speaking because I caught her and your father stealing from our parents, your grandparents. Marigold felt her heart sink. Stealing how your grandmother had dementia in her final years. Your grandfather was overwhelmed caring for her. Your parents offered to help manage their finances. Patricia's voice hardened. They systematically drained their accounts, took out credit cards in their names, and even remortgaged their house without their knowledge. That can't be true, Marigold whispered, though the parallels to her current situation were impossible to ignore. When I discovered what they'd done, I confronted them. They threatened to cut me off from seeing you kids if I went to the authorities. I was already battling cancer at the time and couldn't face a legal fight, so I documented everything and walked away. Patricia paused. I've regretted not fighting harder every day since. Did they? Did they do the same to you? Marigold asked. They tried, Patricia confirmed. After I recovered from treatment, they approached me about investing in one of Richard's business ventures. I refused. That's when Eleanor told the family I was unstable and had fabricated the allegations about them. Marigold thought of the inheritance she'd received from her grandmother, a modest sum that had helped with her lakehouse down payment. I was told Grandma didn't leave much because of her medical expenses. Medical expenses? Patricia scoffed. Your grandparents had excellent insurance and substantial savings. There should have been at least $500,000 in their estate. The revelation hit Marigold like a physical blow. They stole my inheritance. Not just yours, Patricia said softly. Mine too. And your cousin's. Why are you telling me this now? Marigold asked. Because you called me Patricia, answered simply. And because I've always hoped one of Eleanor's children would see through the facade. Your sister seems firmly under their influence, but you were always the observant one. After thanking her aunt and promising to stay in touch, Marigold made another call to her former college roommate, who now worked at Tennessee Mutual Bank. Jessica, I need a professional opinion off the record. If someone committed financial fraud against multiple family members over decades, what kind of paper trail might exist? Jessica's response was measured but informative. Family financial fraud often follows patterns. There would likely be irregular account activities, unexplained transfers, loans taken out around significant life events. If it's been going on for decades, they might have started with small amounts and escalated. Like taking advantage of elderly parents, then moving on to other relatives, Marigold suggested. Exactly, Jessica confirmed. These situations rarely involve just one victim. By midday, Marigold had compiled a disturbing timeline. Her parents' financial deception appeared to stretch back at least 25 years, claiming multiple victims: her grandparents, Aunt Patricia, possibly other extended family members, and now an attempt on her. There was one missing piece, Amber. Was her sister a victim or an accomplice? Marigold decided on a direct approach. She texted Amber, "Need to talk about Mom and Dad's financial situation. Can you meet me for lunch?" They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe halfway between their homes. When Amber arrived with the twins in tow, Marigold's heart sank. Her sister was using the children as shields against any potential confrontation. Auntie Goldie, the twins, Emma and Ethan, exclaimed in unison, running to hug her. "Hi, Munchkins," Marigold said, genuinely happy to see them. "There's a playground visible from our table. Would you like to play while your mom and I talk?" Once the children were happily occupied on the nearby playground equipment visible through the cafe's large windows, Marigold turned to her sister. "Amber, I need to know how much you understand about Mom and Dad's financial situation." Amber's defensive posture was immediate. "I know they've been incredibly generous, unlike some people. Do you know they sold their house 6 months ago? Not last month, like they told me," Marigold pressed. Amber's expression flickered with confusion before hardening again. "They have their reasons for how they present things. They tried to take out a fraudulent loan in my name against my house," Marigold said, bluntly. "Did you know about that?" "That's ridiculous," Amber scoffed. "They would never do something like that." Marigold produced the documentation from the bank. "It's not ridiculous, it's fact. They committed a felony, Amber." As Amber reviewed the paperwork, her face paled. "There must be some mistake." "It's no mistake. And it's not the first time they've done this," Marigold continued. "I spoke with Aunt Patricia today." "The crazy aunt?" Amber looked up sharply. "She's not crazy. She was telling the truth about Mom and Dad stealing from our grandparents." Marigold leaned forward. "Amber, I think they've been manipulating both of us for years. I need to know if you've signed anything for them, recently taken out any loans, added them to any of your accounts." Amber's hands began to tremble. "They've been helping me with the twins since Greg left. They said they were investing my child support payments for the kids' college funds." Marigold felt a chill. "Have you seen any statements from these investments?" "Dad says they're in a special high-yield account that doesn't generate regular statements," Amber whispered. "Oh God, Goldie. What if there is no account?" The pieces were falling into place. Their parents hadn't just been stealing from extended family, they'd been stealing from their own children too. "We need to see exactly what they've done," Marigold said firmly. "And then we need to decide how to proceed." Amber looked at her children playing on the swings, their innocence a stark contrast to the web of deception being uncovered. "They're my parents, Goldie. I don't want to believe this." "I don't either," Marigold admitted. "But the evidence is overwhelming." As they parted ways, Amber promised to look for any financial documents at her apartment and report back. Marigold watched her sister leave with the twins, wondering if their family would ever recover from this betrayal. What she didn't know was that the most shocking revelation was yet to come, one that would explain why her parents had always seemed to favor Amber, and why they felt entitled to take what was Marigold's. 3 days after her lunch with Amber, Marigold sat in her Lakehouse living room, surrounded by financial documents, legal pads filled with notes, and her laptop. She'd taken emergency leave from work to untangle the web of her parents' deception, and what she'd discovered was staggering. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. She opened the door to find Amber looking pale and exhausted. "I found something," her sister said without preamble, clutching a manila envelope. "In the storage unit where Mom and Dad keep their important papers." Marigold ushered her inside. "What is it?" "I don't know exactly," Amber admitted, placing the envelope on the coffee table. "I just know it was hidden inside a lockbox, inside another box labeled, Tax Records, 1987. I probably wouldn't have found it if I hadn't been so thorough." The sisters sat side by side as Marigold opened the envelope. Inside was a faded document with official-looking seals. As she read, her blood turned to ice. "It's an adoption certificate," she whispered. "My adoption certificate." Amber stared at her in shock. "What, I was adopted?" Marigold repeated the words, feeling foreign in her mouth. "At 6 months old?" "That can't be right," Amber insisted. "Mom has always talked about how difficult her pregnancy was with you, how she was in labor for 20 hours. Marigold flipped through the additional papers. "According to this, my biological mother was a teenager named Sarah Winslow. She was Patricia's goddaughter." "Aunt Patricia," Amber gasped. "Is that why they had a falling out?" "Possibly," Marigold murmured, continuing to read. "There's more. A letter from Patricia to Mom and Dad dated just before their estrangement." The letter was emotional and accusatory. Patricia had written about a trust fund established for Marigold by her biological grandparents, the Winslows, which was to be given to her on her 30th birthday. The letter accused Eleanor and Richard of misappropriating those funds, and threatened legal action if they didn't come clean. "They stole my trust fund," Marigold said, her voice hollow. "A fund I never even knew existed." "How much?" Amber asked quietly. Marigold pointed to a figure in the letter. "Almost $2 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Amber spoke, her voice barely audible. "So when you received Grandma's inheritance and bought this place, they felt entitled to it," Marigold finished. "Because in their minds, they'd already spent my money years ago." The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Her parents' constant references to all they'd sacrificed for her, their resentment of her success, their assumption that her home was somehow family property, it all stemmed from a distorted sense that they were owed. "Goldie," Amber said hesitantly, "there's something else you should know. I accessed Mom and Dad's emails." "You what?" Marigold was shocked. Her rule-following sister had actually hacked their parents' accounts. "After what you showed me, I needed to know," Amber explained. "I found emails discussing a plan to gradually move their belongings here while you were at work, creating a situation where it would be too difficult to ask them to leave. Dad wrote that once they were established, they could leverage the emotional attachment to get you to refinance the property for family needs. They were planning to take my home by emotional manipulation." Marigold realized. "And then drain its equity too." Amber pulled out her phone and showed Marigold a series of texts between their parents. "Goldie owes us this and more. That trust fund would have set us up for life if Patricia hadn't interfered." The betrayal was complete. Not only had her parents stolen her biological family's provision for her future, but they'd justified it with a narrative that she somehow owed them for adopting her. "Have you confronted them?" Amber asked. Marigold shook her head. "Not yet. I wanted all the facts first." Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from her father. "We've given you enough time to reconsider your selfish decision. We'll be arriving Sunday with our things." Amber and the twins will follow once we're settled. Amber read the message over her shoulder and her face hardened. They didn't even ask me, they just assumed I'd follow their plan. We need to end this cycle, Marigold said firmly. Together, for the first time in their adult lives, the sisters were truly united. They spent the rest of the day formulating a plan, one that would confront their parents' deception while protecting themselves and the twins from further exploitation. What they didn't anticipate was how viciously their parents would fight back when cornered, or the unexpected ally who would emerge to help them deliver the final blow of justice. You know, seeing my sister's face when she realized our parents had been manipulating her too was heartbreaking but also a turning point for us. Have you ever had that moment when family betrayal actually brought you closer to someone else? If this story is resonating with you so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more family drama stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you'd do in this situation. Now let's continue with what happened when we finally confronted our parents. Sunday arrived with ominous storm clouds gathering over Cherokee Lake, a fitting backdrop for the confrontation to come. Marigold had spent the previous day consulting with Vanessa about her legal options and reconnecting with Aunt Patricia, who was driving in from Knoxville to support her nieces. At precisely noon, her parents' SUV pulled into the driveway loaded with suitcases and boxes. Marigold watched from the window as they began unloading as if their residency was a foregone conclusion. "Are you ready?" Amber asked, standing beside her, with the twins settled in the guest bedroom, occupied with tablets and headphones. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marigold replied, squaring her shoulders. They opened the front door just as Eleanor and Richard approached with the first load of belongings. "Stop right there," Marigold called out, her lawyer voice in full effect. "You are not moving in today, or any day." Her father's face reddened. "Don't start this nonsense again, Goldie. We've made our decision." "No, I've made my decision," Marigold corrected. "And as the legal owner of this property, my decision is final. You are not welcome to live here." "How dare you speak to us that way?" her mother exploded. "After everything we've done for you, you mean like stealing my trust fund?" Marigold asked quietly. The effect was immediate. Her parents froze, the color draining from their faces. "We don't know what you're talking about," her father blustered, but his eyes darted nervously to her mother. "I think you do," Marigold continued calmly. "The trust fund set up for me by my biological grandparents, the Winslows." "Who told you that?" her mother demanded, her voice shaking. "Was it Patricia? That woman has always been jealous of me." "I found the adoption papers," Amber interjected, stepping forward. "And the letter from Aunt Patricia about the misappropriated funds." Their father set down the box he was holding and tried a different approach. "It was complicated, girls. That money was meant to provide for Marigold's upbringing. We were her parents, so naturally you decided to spend it all on yourselves," Marigold finished, "including after I was grown. And when that ran out, you moved on to stealing from Grandma and Grandpa." "Those are vicious lies," Eleanor snapped. "We have the records, Mom," Amber said softly. "Bank statements, forged documents, emails discussing how to hide assets. We know about the timeshare in Boca that you bought with Grandma's retirement fund. We know about the luxury cruise you took with my child support money that was supposed to be in an investment account for the twins." Their parents' expressions shifted from indignation to calculation. Richard placed a restraining hand on Eleanor's arm before she could respond. "Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally," he suggested, his tone conciliatory. "Family disagreements happen. We can work this out." "This isn't a disagreement," Marigold corrected. "It's fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse, all felonies. We're not working anything out. We're giving you a choice." She handed them an envelope containing documents prepared by Vanessa. "Option 1, you sign these papers acknowledging your debt to me, Amber, and the estate of our grandparents. You agree to a structured repayment plan that includes selling your timeshare and liquidating your hidden investments. You seek financial counseling and cease all attempts to manipulate or defraud family members. Or, what Eleanor challenged, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. Or, option 2, Marigold continued. We file criminal charges and civil suits. I've already prepared the paperwork. The evidence goes back decades and involves multiple victims. You'll face prosecution and likely prison time. You wouldn't dare, her father growled. We're your parents. Parents don't steal from their children, Amber said quietly, or lie to them their entire lives. The four of them stood in tense silence, the only sound, the distant rumble of thunder approaching from across the lake. This is how you repay us for taking you in, Eleanor finally spat at Marigold. For giving you our name, our home, our lives. We could have left you in the system, but we chose you. The cruelty of the words hung in the air. Marigold felt them like physical blows but held her ground. And then you spent my entire life making me feel like I owed you for that choice, she replied steadily. You weaponized your parental status to justify stealing what was rightfully mine. What's going on here? A new voice called from the driveway. They all turned to see Aunt Patricia approaching, looking remarkably like Marigold's mother, despite the years of estrangement, the same high cheekbones and intelligent eyes, though Patricia's held kindness rather than calculation. Patricia, Eleanor hissed. I might have known you'd be behind this. I'm behind nothing, Patricia replied calmly. Marigold contacted me after discovering your attempted fraud on her own. I'm simply here to support my nieces in confronting decades of manipulation and theft. You have no right to interfere in our family, Richard blustered. I have every right, Patricia countered. I was Sarah Winslow's godmother and promised to look after her child. I failed in that duty once, by allowing you to isolate Marigold from me. I won't fail again. Marigold felt a surge of emotion at the mention of her biological mother. Did you know her well, Sarah? Patricia's expression softened. I did. She was a remarkable young woman caught in difficult circumstances. She wanted you to have opportunities she couldn't provide, but she never intended for you to be severed from your history or your inheritance. Eleanor made a dismissive sound. She was a foolish teenager who couldn't care for a child. She was 18 in college on scholarship and determined to make the best choice for her baby, Patricia corrected sharply. She trusted you, Eleanor, as my sister, to honor her wishes and the provisions her parents made. Instead, you took advantage of her vulnerability and my illness to steal from a child. The rain that had been threatening finally began to fall, large drops splattering around them on the porch. Take your things and go, Marigold said firmly to her parents. You have 48 hours to decide which option you're taking. After that, the criminal complaints will be filed. You can't just erase decades of parenthood, her father protested, making one last attempt. We raised you, Goldie. And now I'm grown, she replied. Grown enough to recognize abuse and stand against it. Amber stepped forward. I've arranged for you to stay in a monthly rental near my apartment. It's paid through the end of the month. That should give you time to make arrangements, whether that's signing Marigold's agreement or preparing for the consequences of refusing. The shock on their parents' faces at Amber's unified front with Marigold was almost worth the pain of the confrontation. You too, Eleanor whispered to her younger daughter. After all we've done for you, what you've done is use me as a pawn against my sister for years, Amber replied. You've stolen from my children and taught me that manipulation is love. It stops now. As their parents retreated to their SUV in the pouring rain, leaving their boxes on the porch, Marigold felt a strange combination of grief and liberation washing over her. Patricia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You did well, both of you. Standing up to abusers takes extraordinary courage, especially when they're your parents. Inside the house over cups of hot tea, Patricia shared stories of Sarah Winslow Marigold's biological mother and the circumstances of her adoption. The truth was far different from the narrative her parents had constructed. Sarah hadn't abandoned her. She'd made a loving choice while ensuring financial security for her daughter's future. Is she still alive?" Marigold asked hesitantly. Patricia's smile was gentle but sad. "No, dear. She died in a car accident about 15 years ago. But her parents, your biological grandparents, are still living. They've wondered about you all these years." The revelation that she had biological grandparents still living sent Marigold's mind spinning with possibilities and new connections. As the storm raged inside the lake house, a different kind of family was forming, one built on truth and genuine care rather than obligation and manipulation. What none of them realized was that Eleanor and Richard had no intention of quietly accepting either option presented to them. Their counterattack would come swiftly and ruthlessly, threatening everything Marigold had built, including her newly discovered biological connections. The 48-hour deadline came and went with no word from Eleanor and Richard. Marigold had almost convinced herself they were considering the repayment agreement when the first blow landed. She was at work when the managing partner called her into his office, his expression grave. "Marigold, I've received some disturbing correspondence about you. Normally, I wouldn't give anonymous allegations any credence, but these came with documentation that appears concerning." Her heart sank as he slid a folder across his desk. Inside were printouts of doctored financial statements suggesting she had mishandled client funds along with fabricated emails implying unethical behavior. "This is a smear campaign," Marigold said, firmly recognizing her parents' handiwork immediately. "I can prove these documents are falsified." Thankfully, her years of meticulous record-keeping and the firm's secure digital archives made it possible to demonstrate the forgeries within hours. The managing partner, convinced of her innocence, agreed to help investigate the source of the false allegations. But the attack on her professional reputation was just the beginning. That evening she received frantic calls from both Amber and Aunt Patricia. They contacted Child Protective Services. Amber sobbed. "They're claiming I'm an unfit mother and that the twins are in danger because I'm mentally unstable. A caseworker came to my apartment today." Patricia's situation was equally alarming. "Someone broke into my house while I was out. My files about Sarah and the trust fund are missing, along with my computer." The most devastating blow came the following day, when Marigold arrived home to find police cars in her driveway. An officer approached as she parked. "Miss Prescott, we have a report of stolen property being stored on these premises. We have a warrant to search the residence." It took hours to sort out the confusion. Her parents had reported several valuable family heirlooms, stolen items they claimed Marigold had taken from their home without permission. The fact that these items had been in her possession legitimately for years, with documentation to prove it, eventually satisfied the officers. "They're trying to destroy us," Amber said that night as the sisters and Patricia gathered at the lake house to strategize. "They'll stop at nothing. Which means we can't hold back either," Marigold realized. "We wanted to give them a chance to make amends privately, but they've forced our hand." The next morning, with Vanessa by her side for legal support, Marigold walked into the county prosecutor's office with 3 thick binders of evidence. By that afternoon, warrants had been issued for Eleanor and Richard Prescott on multiple charges of fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, and filing false police reports. They were arrested at the airport attempting to flee to Mexico with packed suitcases and nearly $50 0 inches cash. The media coverage was immediate and unavoidable. "Local attorney uncovers decades of parental fraud," ran the headlines. Marigold had hoped to keep the family drama private, but her parents' desperate attempts to destroy her had made that impossible. In the weeks that followed, more victims came forward: distant relatives, family, friends, even members of their church who had loaned money to Eleanor and Richard that was never repaid. The prosecutor estimated the total fraud amount exceeded $3 million over 30 years. Facing overwhelming evidence and multiple charges, her parents accepted a plea deal that included restitution, 5 years in prison, and 10 years of supervised release with financial monitoring. The day after the sentencing, Marigold sat on her lakeside deck, with Amber watching the twins play at the water's edge. Patricia had gone to pick up two special guests, Robert and Martha Winslow, Marigold's biological grandparents, who had flown in from Arizona after weeks of emotional phone conversations. "Are you nervous?" Amber asked, noticing her sister's tension. "Terrified," Marigold admitted. "What if they don't like me? What if I don't measure up to what they imagined Sarah's daughter would be?" "That's not how family is supposed to work," Amber said gently. "Real family doesn't put conditions on love." When Patricia's car pulled into the driveway, Marigold stood on shaky legs. An elderly couple emerged, the woman with Marigold's same honey blonde hair, the man with her distinctive green eyes. No words were needed. Martha Winslow opened her arms, and Marigold stepped into an embrace that felt like coming home. "You look so much like our Sarah," Martha whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've waited so long," Robert added, his voice thick with emotion as he joined the embrace. That evening, gathered around the dinner table with her newfound biological grandparents, her sister and nephews, and Aunt Patricia, Marigold realized that the Lakehouse had finally become what she'd always wanted, a true sanctuary, filled with honest love and genuine family bonds. 6 months later, Marigold stood in a courtroom again, but this time for a joyful reason. The judge smiled as he signed the final adoption papers, making Emma and Ethan legally her responsibility, as well as Amber's. The sisters had decided to co-parent the twins, creating the stable, loving family environment they'd both craved as children. The Lakehouse had been expanded with a new wing for Amber and the children, while Martha and Robert Winslow had purchased the neighboring property, creating an extended family compound that buzzed with activity and laughter. The inheritance trust that had been stolen from Marigold was impossible to recover in full, but with help from forensic accountants, they'd managed to trace and reclaim about 30% of the funds. Marigold established a new trust with that money, this time for Emma and Ethan's education. On the 1-year anniversary of the confrontation, as summer fireflies danced over the lake, Marigold received an unexpected letter forwarded from the prison where her parents were serving their sentences. For a moment, she considered throwing it away unopened. But something, curiosity perhaps, or the final embers of filial obligation, made her break the seal. Inside was a short note in her mother's handwriting. "Marigold, we underestimated you. We always did. Perhaps that was our greatest mistake. Eleanor." No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a final begrudging recognition of her strength. It wasn't closure exactly, but it was something. Marigold folded the note and slipped it into a drawer. She didn't need their validation anymore. As she watched the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson, she reflected on the strange, painful journey that had brought her here. The family she'd grown up with had betrayed her in the most fundamental ways, yet that betrayal had ultimately led her to discover her true origins, reconnect with her biological heritage, and forge authentic bonds with people who valued her for herself, not what they could take from her. The Lakehouse that her parents had tried to claim was now truly hers, filled with the family she had chosen, and who had chosen her in return. There was a beautiful symmetry to it, a justice more complete than any court could provide. 2 years after the arrest and conviction of Eleanor and Richard Prescott, Marigold celebrated her 37th birthday with a lakeside party that would have been unimaginable before the family upheaval. The property that had once been her solitary refuge was now the heart of a thriving extended family. Amber and the twins had fully settled into their wing of the house, their presence bringing the joy of children's laughter rather than the burden Marigold had once feared. The twins were now 7, thriving in school, and growing comfortable with their unique family arrangement. Martha and Robert Winslow had become the grandparents Marigold never truly had, sharing stories of Sarah and filling in the blanks of her biological heritage. Through them she'd connected with cousins, aunts, and uncles from her birthmother's side, an entire branch of family she'd never known existed. Aunt Patricia had moved closer into a small cottage on the Winslows' property, completing their lakeside community. Her health had improved dramatically once freed from the stress of the family secrets she'd carried for decades. The professional damage her parents had attempted to inflict had backfired spectacularly. Marigold's firm, impressed by her integrity during the crisis, had promoted her to partner. She'd developed a specialty in financial fraud and elder abuse cases, using her personal experience to help other victims. On this birthday evening, as twilight settled over the lake, Marigold stood at the edge of the dock momentarily alone amid the celebration. Amber joined her, handing her a glass of champagne. "Penny, for your thoughts," her sister asked. Marigold smiled. "I was just thinking about how differently everything turned out from what I expected when I bought this place. I thought I wanted solitude, and instead you got us," Amber laughed, gesturing to the lively gathering on the lawn. "I wouldn't change a thing," Marigold assured her. "Well, maybe a few things about how we got here." They stood in companionable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the water. "Do you ever hear from them?" Amber asked quietly. "Mom writes occasionally," Marigold admitted. "Never an apology, just observations about prison life and veiled complaints. Dad hasn't reached out at all. I stopped visiting 6 months ago," Amber confessed. "The twins were asking questions I couldn't answer without lying, or telling them things they're too young to understand. We don't owe them our presence," Marigold said gently. "That's one of the hardest lessons I've learned through all this. That sometimes the healthiest form of family loyalty is to ourselves and those who truly love us." The sound of the twins calling for them interrupted the moment. "Mom, Auntie Goldie, Grandpa Robert says it's cake time." As they walked back to the celebration, Marigold reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. There were still moments of grief for the parents she'd thought she had and the childhood that might have been. But those moments were increasingly overshadowed by gratitude for the authentic family bonds she'd discovered. The most unexpected outcome had been her relationship with Amber. Without their parents' manipulative triangulation, the sisters had developed a deep friendship and partnership. They still disagreed at times, but now they worked through conflicts with honesty rather than competition. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the twins were tucked into bed, Marigold sat alone on her deck, savoring the peace of the lake at night. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a reminder of the final restitution payment from her parents' assets. The legal proceedings were officially complete. She found herself thinking about the concept of home and family, how both had been weaponized against her by the very people who should have been her greatest protectors. Yet here she was, having created a true home and genuine family connections out of the wreckage of betrayal. The lake house that her parents had tried to claim through manipulation and fraud had instead become the cornerstone of healing and new beginnings. There was a poetic justice to it that even the most skilled storyteller couldn't have crafted more perfectly. As midnight approached, Marigold made her way to bed, pausing at the hallway wall where photos of her expanded family now hung the twins at the lake. Amber, graduating from her master's program, the Winslows at Christmas, Aunt Patricia, gardening, and in a place of honor, a recovered photo of Sarah, her birthmother, with a smile so similar to her own. The family she'd lost had tried to define her by obligation and debt. The family she'd found celebrated her for exactly who she was. In that contrast lay the most profound lesson of her journey. True family is built on love, respect, and honesty, never on manipulation, obligation, or fear. The lake house by Cherokee Lake, once a symbol of her independence, had transformed into something far more valuable, the heart of a chosen family bound by love, rather than blood or legal documents. And in that transformation lay a victory more complete than any court judgment could provide, the reclamation not just of her property but of her very concept of family and home. You know, looking back at everything that happened, I've learned that sometimes what seems like the worst betrayal can lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. My story isn't just about the heartbreak of family deception, but about the power we all have to create something better from the ashes. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of your own family experiences, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Has karma or justice ever played out in your life in unexpected ways? Did you find strength you didn't know you had when facing family betrayal? Please hit that like button if you enjoyed this journey with me, and subscribe to hear more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and yes, sometimes the sweet taste of justice served. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in navigating complex family situations. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more powerful than the one we're born into. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.